My name is Stacy Small Lorenz. That's S-T-A-C-Y, small S-M-A-L-L, hyphen L-O-R-E-N-Z. I'm a mother of a 6-month-old baby, and I hold a doctorate in ecology. We're residents of Wheaton, Maryland. And last month, I poured my entire reserve supply of breast milk down the drain. 48 ounces, which would have been 12 feedings, a 3-day supply, in case my 6-month-old baby Avery and I were ever separated in an emergency. It had been stored safely frozen, giving me peace of mind, until Pepco's Derecho debacle left us without power for 6 days. If any of you have ever breastfed an infant, you know what it can take to get that far ahead. I am now just keeping up with his daily needs for daycare with no reserve supply because I've never been able to get ahead since the massive power outage that struck our region following the June 29th storm. This is especially difficult because I just returned to work full-time at the end of July and was counting on that backup supply in case I fell behind. From talking to my friends, I know I'm not the only working mother of a breastfeeding infant who suffered the same consequences. We sweltered through the ensuing heat wave until day 6, when after days of wiping down my baby with cold cloths and succumbing to severe nausea myself, we left for Ohio to stay with relatives because our relatives in Montgomery County were also without power. I have 2 close neighbors who are in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy who were also displaced for days, and there are many vulnerable children and elderly and disabled in our extended neighborhood. Unfortunately, we were not the only ones who suffered, and not everyone can afford to pack up and leave or move into a hotel anytime we lose power for an extended period. Our neighborhood in Wheaton is regularly without power, sometimes for days. Mother Nature only has to sneeze for us to lose power. Pepco needs to step up its emergency response time, and the Maryland PSC should hold them accountable to do so. PSC should also hold Pepco accountable for reimbursing its customers, not only for failing to deliver power during the outage, but for losses incurred during the outage and the costs of being displaced. Pepco also needs to seriously step up its emergency communications efforts, and I don't mean its PR campaign. The residents of our block are often the first to call in a power outage and the last to get our power restored. Pepco's communication efforts were predictably dismal in the week that followed the derecho. We called their emergency line at least 3 times a day for 5 days to report tree branches suspended in the power lines, causing our neighbors to be without power. We were on hold for over an hour for some of our first calls. Several times we followed up and were told there was no record of our previous report. Even a call placed to them through 911 on day 2 when the wires started arcing got no response. We only got a visit from a Pepco inspector on day 6 after contacting Congressman Van Hollen's office. To add insult to injury, our neighbor, who is now in her final month of pregnancy, received 2 robocalls saying that power had been restored, only to rush home from Germantown to Wheaton and be disappointed. She tells me that Pepco's current television PR campaign just feels like a slap in the face after everything she went through. It is time that PSC and Pepco wake up to the reality of the 21st century that faces us and our children. With climate change upon us, we will be seeing more heat waves and more frequent intense storms in summer and winter. With that will come higher demands for electricity and increased strain on our power grid. What we experienced last month and after the thunder snow of 2011 is only a taste of our future if Pepco doesn't implement effective climate change preparedness measures. Important reports were released last month by NOAA and IPCC right around the time of Pepco's massive derecho outage about climate change impacts and preparedness for extreme weather events. I would advise the PSC and Pepco officials to stop making excuses about surprise weather events and instead get these reports, get educated, and take heed of the information therein. Now is the time to prepare ourselves for future extreme weather events because they are only going to keep coming. Pepco can make great strides in this arena by upgrading our infrastructure for the survival and well-being of our families and neighbors. Trimming trees is an inadequate response and only increases temperatures and decreases air quality by reducing green canopy and shade, further exacerbating the problem. It is time for Pepco to start acting proactively instead of reactively, implementing smart grid measures, and also burying power lines starting with the most vulnerable neighborhoods, those with high concentrations of economically disadvantaged, young, elderly, and disabled citizens. Furthermore, before talking about passing on costs to the consumer, I would like to point out that we already pay a bill every month as do our neighbors, and collectively it amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars in profits annually, with top Pepco executives taking home millions each year. Many of us won't make that much in a lifetime. Therefore, I propose that Maryland PSC calls upon Pepco to submit a revised reliability plan that includes infrastructure upgrades and burying power lines in the most vulnerable neighborhoods, and that Pepco's shareholders absorb the cost of those upgrades, treating it as a corporate investment rather than a favor to the consumer. Thank you for holding this hearing and taking my concerns and my neighbors into consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out.